Hi there, boys and girls. So today we're going to talk about representing place values. So I'm providing you with a guide for students who truly want to understand the worth of a number. Understanding place value. So the place of a digit or a number determines its value. That means that a 7 that is in the tens place value is worth something different than a 7 in the thousands place value. So here's an example. Let's pause for a second and think, how much would this 5 be worth? That's right, it would be worth 5,000. Now, in contrast, how much would this 5 be worth? Think carefully, this one's a little bit less obvious. So if you said 50, then you're exactly correct. Being in the tens place value, it's worth 5 times 10. So there are a few other things we need to understand in order to fully understand place value. The next sort of rule or general principle is that each place has a value 10 times greater than the one on its right. So for example, the tens would be 10 times greater than the ones. That seems kind of obvious. Less obvious is the fact that the thousands are 10 times greater than the hundreds. That means the opposite is also true. Each place has a value 10 times less than the one on its left. So again, more obvious with the ones being 10 times less than the tens, but maybe less obvious with the hundredths being 10 times less than the tenths. So here's a little bit of math to sort of prove that we're right? 10 times 10 is 100. And if we go back, we know 10 tens gives us 100. And then 10 times 1,000 is 10,000. And again, that one seems a little more obvious. So 10 here gives us 10,000. And the opposite is also true. 1,000 divided by 10 gives us 100, and 10,000 divided by 10 would be 1,000. Now getting into representing. So this is one of the first models we looked at. I lovingly call it the disk model, but you can kind of come up with whatever term you want for it. So it's not unlike your regular place value chart, but it uses small colored disks to represent how many, or the value of each place. So in this case, our number is 1,304 and 25 hundredths. So we'll see that we have 5 hundredths, 2 tenths, 4 in the ones, 3 in the hundreds column, and 1 in the thousands column. Notice that there's nothing in the tens column because we have a 0 in the tens place value spot there. So that's one that's usually pretty easy for most students to get a handle on. You're basically just putting the number of disks in each place value that corresponds to its position in the number. So now we can look at sort of what we might call like our super place value chart, because this one's a little bit complicated. We have, but it does a good job of showing the pattern that numbers follow. So we'll see, looking at this ones area and this thousands area, that both of them follow the pattern ones, tens, hundreds, ones, tens, hundreds. Now the difference is when we're talking about ones here, it's ones of ones, if that makes sense. So a 4 here is literally worth 4. And this is tens of ones, hundreds of ones. In this area, it would be 6 1,000s, and that would be 5 10,000s. And then if there was a digit here, it would be that many hundreds of thousands. But this is an important chart to show the pattern that numbers follow. And if we were to go further on, we'd get into millions and billions and so on and so forth. But for now, we just have to worry about what the pattern looks like here. Now, getting into fractional parts, so smaller and smaller divisions of numbers or parts of numbers, we sort of lose the pattern a little bit. But from here, moving left, it continues on. So in this case, we put the number 56,304 and 25 hundredths into our super place value chart. So we have 5 tens of thousands, 6 ones of thousands, 3 hundreds of ones, so just 300, and 4 ones of ones, so just 4. And then again, we have 2 tenths and 5 hundredths. Now, something that's interesting is when we say this, we say 25 hundredths, which also shows us something important about place value. So not only is it 2/10 and 5 hundredths, this could be slid over here and it could actually be 25 hundredths. And those would have the same value because, as we said, any place value is 10 times greater than the one to its right. So the 2's, or the 2 in the tenths column, is worth 10 times as much as it would be in the hundredths column. Here's a much simpler place value chart, and one that would be just as useful to us this year. So this one doesn't show the ones, tens, hundreds pattern as well, but it sort of uses all the numbers that we need to be familiar with in grade 5. So I've taken that same number we just looked at and put it in this version. We have 5 10,000s, 6,000s, 300s, no tens, 4 ones, 2 tenths, and 5 hundredths. Next, we go on to number forms. So our standard form is the form we're used to seeing, where you just write a number how it normally appears. Now, in this video, I didn't get into writing numbers in words, only because that doesn't really help us represent place value very well. But that is another form that we've looked at, and one that most people in the class are really good at. So the next form that helps us represent place value is called expanded form. Why is it expanded form? Because each digit in our standard form number is expanded to show its value. So the 5 here, if we were to cover up the rest of the numbers, the 5 here we know is worth more than 5. It's actually worth 50,000. And the 6 is worth more than 6. It's worth 6,000. And so on and so forth for the rest of the digits. Now this 2 is interesting because it's after this decimal. We know it's not a regular 2. It's actually only worth 2 tenths. So it would be written like that. And this 5, being 2 places after the decimal, is worth 5 hundredths. And it would be written like that in expanded form. So here's another way of looking at that. We can kind of take each of these and sort of flesh it out and see what it's worth just by isolating that digit. So it's just expanded form written a little bit differently, but showing the same information. All right, so that's it for our representing place value video. I hope that that might have cleared up some misconceptions, or at least reinforced some things you're already familiar with. Stay tuned for more math-related content on this channel. Enjoy.